You know, guys, whenever I open Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 3 up on my computer, I expect myself to be scared. But now I just get depressed. Because in the last episode, boy did I get depressed. That was actually kind of sad. What went down in the last episode was Sadako learning more about her situation, trying to figure out if there's anything that can be done. But I think just based on laws, regulations, and other bullshit, not much can be done, even so there is a little bit of evidence, at least from the bruises that we saw in the last episode, or what Keiichi had pointed out. So, very unfortunate position that Sadako is in, and I'm not really sure what we can do here. But the coach may have some ideas. He's a smart man. Well, aside from his perviness. But let us read on here. Coach got into the car first, then turned around on the narrow path and brought the passenger's side door around for me.
前原さんの気持ちは痛いくらいにわかります。いえ、前原さん以上にわかるつもりです。でも、今この場だけはこらえてください。あなたの心は確かに伝わりましたから。だから、こらえてください。でないと。
もう、わかってます。すみません。さっきはありがとうございました。
I meekly got into the passenger's seat. The car accelerated quietly, and Sadako's house grew farther and farther away in the rearview mirror. We made a wide turn, and then I couldn't see her house anymore.
え？あなたのお家、そんな遠くなんですか？学校の反対側じゃないですか。
I didn't bother to reply. I would have been hard-pressed to give him an answer as to why I was at Sadako's house. Coach didn't say anything more either. For a while, the two of us were silent, the only sounds from the gravel spraying over the road as we drove. I remembered how Rena had said things were different than last year. At the time, she had Satoshi with her. Satoshi protected Sadako, so that less of the sparks fell onto her.
でも今は、サトシはいない。
はい、残酷ですが、それが事実です。
Coach seemed to understand what I really meant when I said that.
悲しく、あまりに残酷な話ですが、私たちの決意や努力、尽力には限界があります。
It sounded like an excuse, but he was right. Even if Coach and I wanted to be people Sadako could depend on, that was all. It ended at the front door. No matter how much I shouted that I would be her Nini, no matter how much I shouted that I wouldn't abandon her, and no matter how much Sadako called me Nini, I couldn't do any more than that.
サトシは一体どこに行っちまったんですか?
Right, Satoshi was another story. Her actual brother Satoshi, he was in a position to protect her far, far better than we ever could. That was the cold, sad truth of the massive gulf between Satoshi and us.
今頃、どこでどうしているんでしょう?
Well, I still think he's dead. I'm pretty sure he was demoned away or whatever. Satoshi left home. I didn't know why, maybe it was because of Yashiro-sama's curse, or he disappeared or something. In any case, he wasn't beside Sadako now. At the time Sadako needed him to protect her most, he wasn't here.
どうして今ここにいないんですか？一番守ってやらなければならないこの時に。
お社様のたたりがどうとかいろいろ言われてますが、家出したとしか言えません。
ある日を境に帰ってこないって仲間が言ってました。妹の聡子に書き置き一つ残さずに家出を。
サトシ君はコツコツとアルバイトをしてたんです。聡子ちゃんが当時とても大きなぬいぐるみを欲しがってましてね。結構いい値段らしくて、そのためにアルバイトをいろいろとしていたらしいんです。妹思いの兄でしたからね。おじ夫婦のもとで不憫な生活を強いられている妹に少しでも立派な誕生日プレゼントを贈ろうとしているんじゃないかってみんなささやき合っていました。
In the end, he didn't use his savings for a birthday present for Sadako.
サトシ君がいなくなり、警察がいろいろと調べたら、サトシ君の貯金が当日すべて本人によって下ろされていることが分かりました。
Okay, but that could have been a setup. for the demoning away.
方々をいろいろと調べた結果、その貯金を資金に東京の方に行ったんではないかということになりました。
東京？何しに？
家出としか言いようがないじゃないですか。
自分が逃げ出すための資金をコツコツと貯めて、そこまでは勝手ですよ。
Again, I still think that, like, because not a lot of this adds up, obviously. It's very weird that he would spend his young life protecting his sister and then just say, sayonara, take all his money and just skedaddle on over to Tokyo or some shit. Like, that just doesn't add up. Not to his personality that we've heard about.
でも、聡子を置いてくことはないじゃないですか。同じ家出するなら、聡子も連れて行くべきだった。
Even now, Coach was still calm. He wasn't trying to pour any oil on the fire of my anger at all. He just waited until my anger naturally subsided. After listening to gravel being crushed under the wheels for a little while, Coach spoke abruptly.
察してください。置いて行かれた聡子ちゃんも同じ考えに至ったんです。
I'm a burden on my brother, and that's why he abandoned me. He didn't take her with him when he left. How terrible must Sotoko have felt, being betrayed by the brother she loved so much.
でも、聡子ちゃんはとても強い人でした。もちろん、親しい友人たちの支えもあってのことでしたが、ああして笑顔を取り戻すことができました。
Yeah, and oh, what the fuck? I recalled how Sotoko had spoken of Satoshi so brightly when I was eating dinner with her and Rika-chan a few days ago. At the time, I didn't think any more of it than how pleasant their sibling love had been. But now that I did think about it, I realized it was like she was peering into the distance from atop a pile of tragic perseverance. Okay, I was gonna say that it's not easy for someone to just, you know how she calls Satoshi her Nini, giving him that sort of cutesy brotherly nickname. It's not easy to just kind of replace that brother position or position that a sibling had. Sure, you can call somebody else family. Like I half jokingly call like some really close friends of mine brothers, but it's just that. It's not like a close position or anything, but I can refer to friends as family at certain points. And I'm sure a lot of other people can as well, but to replace that specific position, not add on to family, but to replace a family member because, you know, they're gone, that's, I don't know, that's a little different, a little bit more difficult. Again, she is young, but she is smart for her age. This is anime after all.
その時までにお荷物じゃなくなった自分を見てほしいって。
聡子はお荷物なんかじゃないですよ。あいつ俺なんかよりよっぽど生活力はあるし、大抵のことは何だってできる。そりゃレナやリカちゃんなんかと比べれば劣る点はたくさんあるかもしれないけど、そこいらのやつよりよっぽど一人前ですよ。
サトシ君がいつ帰ってきてもいいように、そういう風になれるよう努力した結果です。涙ぐましい努力があったんですよ。
While she lived with Rika-chan, while Rika-chan taught her how to handle everything flawlessly, also that she could welcome back Satoshi at any time, so that she could show him that she wasn't ashamed.
で、そのサトシはいつ帰ってくるんですか?
I asked Coach, but he knew he wouldn't be able to answer. In any case, Satoshi ran away. He left Soroko and ran away from Hinamizawa. Someone said that when you leave Hinamizawa and run away, Yashiro-sama's curse gets you, right? Then that made sense. Satoshi running away and his disappearance, that would obviously mean people thought it was a curse, right? And they could smile, as though it were his own fault, as though he got what he deserved. Hey Yashiro-sama, whoever you are, Satoshi didn't vanish because he ran away. You demoned him away with your curse, didn't you? If that's not what happened, then I won't forgive you.
サトシはいつ頃逃げ出したんですか?
去年の綿流しのお祭りの夜、おばが異常者に殺されて、その数日後の聡子ちゃんの誕生日にです。
聡子の誕 誕生日に
God damn it. I slammed my hands on the dashboard in front of me with all my might. Hey man, that's still somebody's car. Satoshi, of all days, he could have chosen to run away. Their aunt just died a few days before, didn't she? All your days of suffering were about to end, weren't they? You were just about to start thinking about a new life, weren't you? It's wrong to be happy about someone dying, but for Sadako and her brother, her birthday had come at a critical turning point. Their mean uncle had fled town and the siblings would be left alone. They should have been able to be happy about that. On Sadako's birthday, Sadako was probably waiting for her brother to return the whole time. Waiting for her brother to return when he never did. Waiting with bated breath for her brother to return, her hopes and dreams of a new life to come growing ever larger. But no matter how long she waited, he didn't come back. He didn't even contact her. Sadako, trembling in anticipation of a great present, just when would she have to face the cold, terrible truth? Satoshi, you fucking idiot. I could feel my blood rising to my head in my anger at Satoshi. I was frustrated. I was aggravated. I couldn't forgive him. Sadako still respected and adored her brother. And I just skipped that for some reason. Such a person wouldn't just come back. Now, when he was most needed. Yes, no one would protect her. Not even her real brother Satoshi.
だから、あなたがニーニーだと認めてもらえて嬉しかったです。
え？
私もさとこちゃんの幸せを祈る一人ですが、社会的立場があり、日中は仕事をしている身です。私がさとこちゃんのために割いてあげられる時間は少ない。でもあなたは違います。学校で生活を共にし、さとこちゃんやさとしくんとも年はほとんど離れていない。あなたは自分ができることに限りがあると思っていますが、それでも私よりはずっとさとこちゃんに手を差し伸べられる場所にいるのです。だから私の分までさとこちゃんの力になってあげてほしい。そう願っています。
そんなことは監督だって。
もちろん年季のある私だからこそできる助けだっていろいろあると思います。同じようにあなたにしかできない助けだってあるということです。私たちは互いにそれを全うすべきだと申し上げたいのです。
Was that a little too complicated? Coach added that, but I shook my head in response. When I heard him say he had job skills, it reminded me that he was an adult, in a different position from all of us. Apparently he's also a doctor, not exactly sure in what, but apparently he's a doctor. Maybe I should ask him about it.
監督は法律とか詳しいですか？
いえ、平均的に疎いですが、何か？
I thought back to when I argued with Mion and the others about Sadako. Our children's argument had only left us with the conclusion that we would have to wait and see, but what would an adult think?
児童福祉法でしたっけ？児童の安全を確保するために緊急措置として親子を分離させるという方法があるそうです。
緊急措置？じゃあすぐに聡子を叔父の元から救い出せるということじゃないですか。
聡子ちゃんがそれを望まないかもしれません。
聡子が望まない？どうして？
Coach didn't answer me. I didn't know why he didn't. It was clear as day that Sadako's uncle was being violent and treating her like a slave. So then why? I clamped down on my frenzied emotions and waited intently for Coach to answer, but he never did. It wasn't like he was pretending he hadn't heard me. If I had to say, it was more like he wanted to explain but couldn't put it in the right words.
聡子ちゃんは多分そういう仕打ちに耐えるのを試練だと考えているかもしれません。
試練？変な宗教じゃあるまいし。
ご存知と思いますが、サトシ君は聡子ちゃんをずっとかばってきました。聡子ちゃんもずっとサトシ君に頼ってきました。甘えてきたと言うべきかもしれません。
I had known for a while that Satoshi had always protected Sadako from their aunt and uncle. But that was his duty as an older brother, not something to worry about.
それがトラウマになったかもしれないんですよ。自分が兄に もたれかかりすぎたから兄が自分を嫌ってしまったんではないか。
Ah, okay. And for Sadako, the current situation was a retelling of the story of a little over a year ago. But this time, Satoshi wasn't here.
だから誰にも頼らずに自分の力だけで試練を乗り越えたい。そういう力を身につけなければサトシ君は帰ってこない。そういう考えになっていると私は考えます。
Now that he mentioned it, Sadako had never said a word about how hard it had been before. I figured she was being threatened not to talk about it, but
みんなと相談して児童相談所とかに通報すべきかなんて話をしてました。
聞いてますよね。昨年も福祉士さんがサトコちゃんのところに行ってるのは。
はい、結局様子見で余計にいじめられたって話も。
あれサトコちゃんが自分で通報したらしいんです。でその結果余計いじめが水面下へ移行してエスカレートした。サトコちゃんに降りかかるいじめも増え、それをかばうサトシ君の負担も著しく増えた。
ひょっとしてサトコそれ通報した自分の責任だなんて思ってるんじゃ。
Coach nodded quietly.
多分サトコちゃんに通報の話をするととても嫌がるか、その必要はないと強がりを言うと思います。サトコちゃんに内緒で通報したとしても福祉士に対して自分は虐待を受けていないと言い張るでしょうね。
Sadako always acts tough and doesn't readily admit defeat, so I couldn't imagine that easily.
一応児童相談所には裁判所の許可も当事者の許可も一切不要で緊急措置ができる強い権限があるんだそうです。虐待が公然の事実ならサトコちゃんが否定しても身柄は強制的に保護されるでしょう。それはサトコちゃんにとっては負けを意味するものなのかもしれませんが。
勝ち負けの問題じゃないですよ。サトコは現実に。
話を折りますが、身柄が保護されると所定の施設に送致されます。そうするとですね、そこで暮らすことになるので、つまり引っ越しということになります。ですから学区変更で転校にもなります。
転校は仕方ないです。それであいつが保護されるなら。
サトコちゃんはその辺の事情も知っています。だからますます保護を望みません。
どうして？
あの家でサトシ君の帰りを待つのがサトコちゃんの生きる理由でもあります。兄に捨てられた少女が何に生きる理由を見出したか、あなたのでなくサトコちゃんの価値観で考えてあげてください。
I mean, that actually is kind of smart to look at it from a different perspective. I felt like he was trying to confuse me with that hard-to-understand roundabout way of talking so unique to adults. The point was that I couldn't do anything about Sadako wanting to stay in that house, and that I should watch until she gives in. In the end, no matter what I said, Coach himself was saying to wait and see.
俺は分かりませんよ。
はい。
俺は本当にサトコが危ないと感じたら誰の意思も聞かずに行動します。その結果サトコは不快な思いをして俺を恨むことがあるかもしれないけど、最終的にはそれがサトコの幸せにつながると信じます。
Coach turned to me, gazed fixedly into my eyes. It was written all over his face. He was shocked at what such a young kid had said.
どうしてあなたはそこまで。
Coach, no, rather. Normal adults might not have to understand. So I taught him the creed and the values that I believed in.
サトコは俺の仲間だから。そして俺はサトコのニーニーだから。
Oh, my
で
bad.
は理由は足りませんか？
I stared at him with a will strong and unbreakable as steel, as his eyes betrayed a tiny bit of unrest.
いえ、足りないなんてことはありません。
We were silent for a little while until finally Coach said only that.
誓ったじゃないですか、俺たち。
すみません。
サトコを絶対に泣かせないって。
We made a vow on that day of the barbecue party. I didn't think about it hard at all, but Coach and I still made a promise. that we wouldn't ever let Sotoko cry. Coach gave a dry grin of regret, immediately apologizing for not remembering. One way or another, when he grinned like that, it made me think that his enthusiasm for saving Sotoko was a tiny bit smaller than mine. He lightly hit the brakes, making a skidding noise, and my whole body suddenly fell forward.
ひょっとして前原さんのお家ってあれですか?
Yeah.
ああ、前原屋敷が前原さんのお家だったんですね。
Before I knew it, we were almost to my house. Can you just like pull into the front yard? Make the most incredible entrance. It is a big ass house when you think about it. Not a real big fan of the shape of it. It's too triangular. Case file 31. 31. Plain to see. Is that what it says? Yeah, I think so. That's our achievement that we got there. All right, let us view our tip. Case 31. December 1st, 1981. Prefecture Juvenile Welfare Division reports. Do not view, do not duplicate. Case 31, November 20th. Sotoko Hojo, how many years old? Residence, Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone. Consultation circumstances. Anonymous telephone SOS of child abuse. Abuse situation. Anonymous claims that a female child is suffering physical abuse by adoptive parents, her guardians. Family structure marks abusers. Adoptive father, adoptive mother, older brother, child in question. Note, in June 1980, the child's parents died in an accident, and she was given to her uncle on her father's side, her father's younger brother. Child Consultation Center's response. On the day of the anonymous telephone consultation, the center called the child's school and asked of her situation. The next day, the welfare officer on duty visited the child's home and heard what they had to say. Both adoptive parents agreed to the center's coaching. Contacted anti-abuse network in the city. As part of this suggested coaching, a district welfare officer in the area began visiting for coaching at fixed intervals. The scrawled note below is stapled to the report. Related information from former official Mr. W. Sorry, I can't speak. Refer to 1977 document D2-3, number 44. Ask Chief Investigator F from the city's education consultation offices. He is well informed about it. Huh. Well, that was something. I mean, it's obvious what that was. But that was something. I went home and watched the day sweat off in the shower. Normally, I could reset everything by taking a shower and forgetting all the bad things. But that didn't happen today. I got out of the shower to find fresh underwear placed neatly in the laundry basket. Normally, I didn't stop to think about it, but today I felt happy at my mother's consideration. At the same time, however, it made me realize how much Sotoko must be suffering. At the very moment I was appreciating this gentle kindness, Sotoko might be being bruised by her uncle's cruel words. Or physical attacks and shit. She had real bruises. I went up to the second floor and shut myself in my bedroom. Then facing my desk, I folded my arms. My topic of thought, of course, was Sotoko. We thought that if we could just get a public agency to intervene in the right way, the problem would be solved. But with what Coach said, I didn't think it would be so easy. Sotoko was obstinate, and she would stubbornly deny the abuse and try to endure it. And that was an act of atonement towards Satoshi, who had protected her before and then run away. As long as she thought that way, the situation wouldn't be so simple. But earlier, before Coach, I made a clear declaration. If I thought Sotoko was in danger, then I would do what I had to. In the end, that meant I was just going to have to wait and see too. Nevertheless, I thought I'd drawn a clearer line than Coach or my friends had. If the time came, I would report it. Over the phone. Given Sotoko's personality, she might criticize me if she found out. But I believed it was ultimately the best decision. Wait, Keiichi Maibara. Would that really be all it took for the problem to end? Say that I reported it to a public agency, like the Child Consultation Center. What if they stuck to their wait-and-see attitude like last year again? Last year they decided to do just that, and the situation improved temporarily, but then the aunt, thinking herself a laughingstock, increased her tormenting in secret. In the end, things became more underhanded than ever before. This year it was her uncle. I had just seen him for the first time today, but the man seemed much more direct, much more violent than the word underhanded could imply. He wasn't like their aunt. No, not that subtle. He was more direct. He might also assault her with punches and kicks, punches and kicks, and that could easily be discerned from the bruises I saw, and bruises and such I saw on Sadoko's body. Shit, you're too naive, Keiichi Maibara. However heroic it may seem to report what was happening, if it doesn't save her, then it doesn't mean anything. Reporting things to the public agency was only one option, and leaving everything to them would be dangerous. We would need something more to guarantee Sadoko's safety. I scratched madly at my head, thinking, and then tilted it back, wanting at least a little bit of calm. The memories of angry arguing with my friends today came to mind. I was embarrassed that I hadn't realized it until Rena had said something. She was right. My house is big. Compared to all the houses with the straw-thatched roofs in Hinamizawa, it was really big. We did actually have empty rooms. I've never thought that we were affluent, but also never that we were poor. I just didn't admit it because people would think I was arrogant. But maybe my family really is wealthy. We had a few rooms we could lend to Sadoko. The guest rooms are only in use when people related to my dad's job come and stay every once in a while. Plus, if we cleaned up a few of the rooms my dad uses for storage, they could work for her as well. As for food expenses, that might have been a more serious problem than a kid like me could imagine. Lunch every day would be manageable. All of our friends would just have to bring a little bit more for lunch than they usually did. With everyone pecking at everyone else's food anyway, it would be manageable. For breakfast and dinner, though, that would have to be up to Mom. I would need to convince her to lend Sadoko more than just a room. Of course, I don't even think convincing her of that would be easy. About how much did it cost for one person to eat? How many tens of thousands of yen per month? They couldn't complain about it if I shouldered that, could they? I only had 10 or 20,000 yen in savings, but it was something. I actually had even more thanks to New Year's gifts and such, but my parents had taken all that and put it into a fixed time deposit. If I could get access to that, it should add up to a lot of money. And if I got that far, I should ask Mion and Rena to share some of the burden. Of course, I wouldn't depend on that. Rena got mad at me, didn't she? About how I shouldn't just shove responsibility onto others? I'd have to ask for help. Even so, I'd basically be saving her myself. I would follow through on it. Oh, but it wouldn't be only food expenses. There were a lot of other things that you couldn't do without, like baths and laundry. My mother was awfully methodical and strict about cutting out inefficiencies, and for once that was troublesome. She might even make reference to the money it would cost for the detergent Sadoko would use for her own clothes. I couldn't think only about food expenses. I needed more money. Hey, wait, Keiichi Maibara. Since when was all of this about money? Even if you could afford it, you would need your parents' permission first, before you can log online. Right? And they'd be looking after a young girl for a really long time. What would I say to persuade them? Just calm down a little bit, Keiichi Maibara, and you'll realize right away that you can't. Even if you asked them seriously, they would tell you to call the police. Even if you managed to gain their empathy, why should the Maibara family have to shoulder all the burden by itself? And that's what would happen. That was it. It was very sad and frustrating, but no matter how much I wanted to help, my resolution alone couldn't save anything. I mean, it's, you know... Yes, but it's basically the same, situation that Mion was in, aside from some other things, of why she couldn't just bring Sadoko in. It's not that simple. It's not that easy. There is a lot of, things to consider. Obviously, we have a huge house here. I hadn't actually realized that from the get-go, but it is true. We definitely do. And with the good job that Keiichi's concerning father. Well, actually, his father's not really concerning. It's his artwork. But aside from that, it's definitely, you know, a good paying job from the sounds of it, for them to live where they live. I felt frustrated. I believe my feelings were stronger than anyone else's. I even thought they were stronger than Coach's. And yet, now Coach has some, you know, really strong feelings, but probably not for the right reasons. But, you know, jokes aside, he does care. At that point, there were 2 knocks at my door, and Mom poked her head inside.
起きてたの?
Okay, thank God. People are talking. I can actually get a drink. I am thirsty.
さっきからご飯ってずっと呼んでるわよ。
あ、うん。今行く。
As someone financially dependent on his parents, I shouldn't say this, but I just sat around doing nothing and food suddenly appeared. It felt so natural to me that I'd shamelessly thought of it as the responsibility of the parents who gave birth to me. But when I realized that natural thing was actually a right, I came to realize just how hard it was to grant that privilege to others. Even the boring meal in front of me, no better than it ever was, had more meaning than that tonight. There was food for 3 on a table right now, for Dad, for Mom, and for me. I couldn't imagine how hard it would be to add another place at the table. Think Hachimibra. If it was hard to make food for 4, then just think about how 4 people could eat food made for 3. Oh, I changed around the way I thought. And with that, I began to consider an unthinkably bold plan. That's right. I didn't need to get my parents' permission. She should just live here in secret. That's a terrible idea. I got upset when I found out a while ago, but if I remembered right, if you climbed out the window and then shimmied down the first floor roof or the gutter, you could go in and out of the house directly from my room. Sadako's physical ability far surpassed my own, so it would be even easier for her. I hadn't even thought about it, but her living here secretly was actually a necessity. No, I'm pretty sure that's just gonna lead to bad ideas. I'd only have to bring Sadako to my house when the public agencies said they would wait and see. In other words, if Sadako's uncle continued to be her guardian. If, in such a situation, word got out that she was here, her uncle would barge in and drag Sadako back with him. Her uncle was her rightful guardian, so my parents would hand her over without an argument, no doubt. So I needed to keep it a secret that she was living here. If it needs to be a secret, then having my parents' help would mean a lot, but you gotta deceive your allies first, like they always say. I have never heard that before. Okay, persuading my parents was an unrealistic proposition, so I'll search for a way to have her live here in secret. When I was around, she would just have to be really quiet in my room on the 2nd floor. The issue was the daytime. If she was hiding from her uncle, then she shouldn't go to school. It might be lonely, but not going would be the better option. I could easily teach Sadako the stuff she learns in her grade. Actually, during school, I mostly help all the younger kids out rather than study my own stuff. I think this is very naive. As Rena and Mion were saying to him earlier, it really is naive to think this way. During the day, I would need to go to school so I wouldn't be home. My parents respected my privacy now that I was this age, but they wouldn't go snooping around in my room while I was gone, I think. If she holed herself up in my room, it would be okay, right? If my parents did come, thanks to where the 2nd floor was, she could hear their approach from the sound of them coming up the stairs. And there would be a little bit of time before they got all the way up, I estimated a few seconds, that she would be able to hide herself in the closet. Wait, Keiichi. Something doesn't make sense. If she can't go to school, then what'll she do for lunch? Calm down already. I could just leave her my own lunch, couldn't I? I should just go to school without lunch and get everyone else to split theirs with me. Okay, that's good. No more contradictions or oversights, right? What about bathing? Breakfast and dinner. I could somehow get her to go without breakfast. I can go with 2 meals a day when I sleep in on Sundays, after all. Every night I'd pretend as though I had a bigger appetite, and then ask for a bigger helping. And then I could just somehow give part of that to Sadako. As a test, I stood up from my seat with my plate of fish in my hands.
どうしたの、ケイチ。ご飯は座って食べなさい。
ちょっと気分が変えたくなってさ。自分の部屋で食べてもいいかな。
ボロボロ落として汚すぞ。食事は食卓で食べなさい。
ごめん。
Hey, wait. I only tried to take away one plate of fish, and they ganged up on me? In reality, it was impossible for me to smuggle food away without my parents knowing about it. But it must have been worth taking the time to think about. There must be some trick, some method to avoid them realizing. Even if I can't think of one today, I might think of one tomorrow. My appetite was rapidly fading, so I finished early and went back to my room. Sorry, I just really wanted to finish my drink. Like, it is really hard to speak when it's hot and you're thirsty. The thirst must be quenched. I went back there and tried to think about it from Sotoko's point of view. For example, let's say my parents were coming up the stairs right now. I've got to hide. I opened the closet. Clatter, clatter. It didn't open quietly. Hey, wait, didn't it always open real smooth and quiet? Why was it suddenly doing this now? Was this house even structurally safe? Was it already showing signs of dilapidation? Or however you pronounce that? Or were the hinges just not greased well enough? Could I just apply some lubricating wax? The sound itself may have been soft, but it left me uneasy as to whether my parents would detect it happening when they climbed the stairs. But this was an easy problem. I could do something about it. I just had to fix it up a little bit so it didn't make noise anymore. For now, I'll close myself in the closet as though I'd successfully hid. I basically always left my futon out on the floor. I couldn't think of any real reason my parents would want to go into my closet. Even so, there still might be some reason they would. I might need to construct some sort of camouflage so they wouldn't be noticed even if they did open it, or she wouldn't be noticed. But the more she worried about that, the less time she'd have to actually hide, meaning it would be more likely they hear a noise. And then I suddenly had to go to the bathroom. The bathroom? The need to use the toilet, so obvious and yet such a fatal flaw. The only bathroom was on the first floor. It would be absolutely impossible for her to use it without my family realizing. I might need to set up a portable toilet, like a chamber pot, I guess. Sadako would hate it, so she could go in my room. But the stench would be pretty terrible. Anyone sensitive would probably notice the smell without even coming into the room. The bath was okay though. She could just take a bath when my parents were out. But I couldn't do anything about a toilet. When her stomach started to hurt, if my parents were lazying around downstairs, she'd be in trouble. It was then that I noticed that I'd been crawling at my head, or clawing, at my head with both hands. I sat down in the dark closet with my knees against my chest. I buried my face in them and tore at my hair. The more I thought, the more contradictions popped up. The more I thought, the more things failed. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work. I'm sorry to say it, buddy, but I think you should, like, maybe use your brain on something that might be more feasible. The more that I worried, the more I was reminded of how little power I actually had. My back started to hurt from staying in a cramped place for so long. But if I was to shelter Sadako, I would need to force her to feel this pain. To live in such a dark, narrow, suffocating place forever. But it would still be better than being abused by her uncle, or so I wanted to think. Well, I don't know, because she's getting a meal, she's getting bathed, she's getting all that at home, but she's getting abused. She's being kind of thrown around as a slave, or not much of a slave, but more of like a servant, and then being beaten, you know. There's that, but I don't know. Would that be better than, you know, trying to hide around, pooping and peeing in a room, a bedroom, mind you, and just, you know, not doing anything ever? Like, is that really better? I don't know. It's such a shit situation, sure, but man, it got hard to breathe, so I gave in and crawled out of the closet. I looked at the clock, and to my surprise, it was 3:30 in the morning. It had felt like so little time, but it was so unbelievably long. When I realized that, I was slammed with a terrible urge to sleep, as if the time had only just caught up with me. I didn't have enough strength to fight it, so I fell flat into my futon. Shit, I can't just go to sleep like this. If I waste any time, that'll mean I'm taking the same wait-and-see attitude that Mion and Coach and everyone else did. I needed to keep worrying about how to rescue Soroko for a minute, or even a second longer than everyone else. Isn't there a better way? Isn't there a better way? That one phrase I spoke to myself swirled around and around in a spiral, and steadily took over my entire mind. From my last moment of consciousness, I thought, there were a lot of blind spots in what I had considered tonight, but I absolutely wasn't wrong for having those ideas. Tomorrow I would suggest this bold plan to the others. Please don't. Mion might be able to help somehow, and Rena was really sharp, so she might have a good suggestion. And above all, we needed to rescue Soroko once again, with everyone helping out. I felt pathetic for letting myself fall asleep. I'm sorry, Soroko. Jesus, man. I don't know, like, I'm really happy that he cares as much as he does, because as we're finding out, she really is a person worth caring about. Don't get me wrong on that, she really is. Which is why, like, I got a little depressed in the last episode. And why this whole situation in itself is very depressing, but I don't know. I don't think going about it this way is the best way, you know, to consider things. I think we need to put our mind towards thinking of a more feasible solution. The ceiling blurred into view. It was hot. There was a thin layer of moist sweat on me. The voices of the cicadas permeating my room were somehow grating to my head. I remember today was a weekday and quickly brought myself to consciousness. And then finally I leaped out of bed. The clock read a little before 10. I was totally late. When I wandered downstairs, my mom would get mad at me. There was nothing I could do, though. After reviewing the schedule for the school day for a moment, I suitably rearranged the stuff in my bag. I hurried and got dressed and went down the stairs. There was no sign of my parents anywhere. Maybe they went out somewhere together. So that's how it was. My mother had probably woken me up once this morning, but then I fell back asleep without remembering it. And my parents, thinking I'd gone to school, left. Something like that probably happened. I went to the front door, and as I expected, it was locked. Looked like I was right. It was further evidence of my speculation being correct. When I realized my parents weren't here, I suddenly felt less like I had to rush to get to school. There was one portion of breakfast left in the dining room, probably mine. The milk they'd poured in it had gone warm since a while ago. When I realized how hard it would be to sneak food for Soroko, yesterday I'd cried. While thinking back on it, food wasn't the only issue in that regard. I wasn't in a position where I could care for Soroko by myself anyway. It's such a heavy thing just to save a single person. I'd seen this on TV and in comics all the time. Those feel-good words about how you'll save your friends for sure and such. Was that why I ran my mouth like that, swearing to save her? Because I wanted to feel good about it? No, that absolutely wasn't true. Because the fact was I couldn't save her. Because I didn't want to think like an adult, like I couldn't do anything but watch. Had Soroko gone to school today? I immediately realized that was a meaningless question. Whether or not she did, there wouldn't be a change in the environment she'd been placed in. If I couldn't save her, and no one else could either, then we can only pray for a miracle. With a vague goal of getting to school in mind, I sluggishly put on my shoes and stumbled out the front door. I had only overslept by 2 or 3 hours, but the sunlight and air felt completely different from how they usually were in the morning. Well, of course they did. Once 10 o'clock came around, you could barely call it morning anymore. I didn't feel like walking the same old route to school. I needed to ultimately end up there, but it was like I didn't want to choose the shortest route, the most proactive one to get to school. Put in a more positive light, maybe I wanted some time to walk by myself and think. I had to go to school, partly to make sure Soroko was safe. But I hadn't come up with any plans. Yet. Nothing since last night. So the path I took from my house was in the complete opposite direction. If I went this way, I'd pass Rena's house, and the dam site. It would be quite a detour. I calculated how long of a detour it would end up being, and then satisfied with the answer, I started to walk. Rena had brought me to the dam site a few times. One section of it turned into an unlawful, oversized garbage dump, and Rena really liked going fishing for junk in there. Without that, she'd come off as a completely normal girl, too. I can think of a few other qualities she could do without, but whatever. Ah, it's been a while since we've been here, huh? The view quickly opened up wide, and I was hit by a strong wind. There was no shelter here at this big dam site. Maybe it was a good thing I came here, I thought. At the very least, it was more healthy to think about stuff in a place like this instead of my cramped bedroom. I took a deep breath and filled my lungs with the rich, cold air unique to Hinamizawa. Ring, ring. I turned around reflexively. It was a bicycle bell. Considering where I was standing, I don't think they were trying to get me out of the way. They'd ring the bell because they wanted something from me. Oh. And he's not speaking to me. Tomitake is his name. I always forget his name, I swear. Hey, excuse me. You're from Hinamizawa, right? Yes, why? I've seen this person around a few times. Right, I remembered. His name, I think, was Tomitake, a freelance photographer who lived in Tokyo. He would zealously visit Hinamizawa every season to take some pictures, or so Mion and the others told me, I think.
古出神社ってここからどう行けばいいか教えてもらえないかい？マップを宿に置いてきちゃったみたいでね。困ってたんだよ。
ここから神社ですか？
I knew where everything was in my head, but explaining how to get there was difficult. I've been there. I was a little irritated at having been bothered for this, but when I realized it meant my detour actually meant something, that feeling faded quickly.
教えてもいいですけど、ちょっと口で説明するのは難しいですよ。一緒でよければ連れて行ってあげますけど。
え？それはかたじけないね。助かるよ。あ、でもいいのかい？
I mean, we offered, and it's like we're already ditching school, so fuck it.
君の用事は。
Tomitake-san finally appeared to have realized how strange it was for a student like me to be here at this time of day. I smoothly told him not to worry about it, and then turned my back and started walking towards the Furude shrine. Tomitake-san hurried to his bike around and came after me. Or to turn his bike around, I'm so sorry.
ごめんごめん。
I cannot read.
気にしないでくれよ。男には組織を離れて一匹狼になりたい時もあるんだからね。
What a free-minded freelancer. It was easier for me, too, that he was under that impression. I'm Tomitake, a freelance photographer. I specialize in wild birds and landscapes. I'm still pretty unknown, though. It seemed absurd for him to introduce himself when I was just showing him to the shrine, but he gave me his name, so I needed to give mine back. I'm Maibara. Pleased to meet you, I guess. Maibara-kun. Pleased to meet you. He seemed like a pretty silly man, but that felt kind of good considering I'd been suffocating with worry over Sadako all night. Along the way, Tomitake-san spoke at length to me about how precious the nature in Hinamizawa was and how it was a treasure trove of rare wild birds, despite my not having asked. I wasn't interested in what he had to say, but he seemed to be enjoying himself, so I left him to it. Yeah, we be traveling.
神社の境内です。
ありがとう。助かったよ。ああ、ちょっと遅刻しちゃったかな。
As Tomitake-san mumbled to himself, he left his bicycle nearby and started to climb the stairs quickly. I didn't have a watch, but as far as my internal clock could guess, it was still a little late in the morning. School wasn't very far from here. Maybe I could kill a little more time until then. With that in mind, I went up the steps in pursuit of Tomitake-san. When I reached the top of the long staircase, I arrived at the wide-open shrine grounds that were too grand-looking for this tiny village. Tomitake-san? Oh, there he is. It looked like he was supposed to be meeting someone here. Then he got lost and ended up being late. He was bowing to a lady who must have been the person he was meeting. And there she is. This creepy ass woman. That lady, I knew her.
あら、前原くんじゃない。こんにちは。今日は学校はお休みかしら？
あれなんだ、圭一君ついてきたのかい？
別にそんなつもりはないですよ。ただ、ちょっと時間つぶしがしたかっただけです。
あらあら、重役出勤とは優雅なものね。さすがは有名人。今から大物ぶりを発揮してること。
What was I, a celebrity? Well, she did say my name out of nowhere anyway. I was oddly concerned about what she meant by famous.
あら、私の名前はまだ思い出せない？
Yeah, I can never remember her name either. It's these two that I always forget because they die at like the halfway point and then we never talk about them again. You know, other than the fact that they were mysteriously killed or whatever.
高野美代さんだよ。村の診療所に勤めてる。圭一君は健康そうだから、あまり病院のお世話にはならないかな。
せっかくお知り合いになれたんだから、今度病気か何かできたら、ちょっぴりだけサービスしてあげようかしらね。
Oh yeah? Am I gonna lay down on my, I guess, if we lay down on our back, we can't get a back massage. That's what I was gonna say. Glad I stopped myself, but I still announced what I was going to say, so fuck me, right? But are we gonna get a massage of some sort? Because I'm down for that. This lady named Takano-san, I kind of didn't remember her. And maybe we passed each other on the street a few times, but I was pretty sure this was the first time we talked. Well, this is Hinamizawa. Even if I don't know a person's name, it's not unusual for them to know mine. I glanced at Takano-san and saw that she had a bag and a camera.
ひょっとして、二人とも写真仲間ですか？あ、それで待ち合わせを。
仲間でなんてとんでもない。素人の私に、二郎さんが優しくてほどきをしてくださるだけなのよ。ねえ。
そんなことないよ。高野さんは飲み込みが早いからね。僕の指導なんかなくても、実に自由に撮影をこなすよ。本当さ。
I couldn't tell which of them was ahead in the conversation. Well, they were certainly one couple you wouldn't get tired of watching.
いよいよあさってが綿流しね。
Oh, I was wondering when that was coming up. Alright, we'll talk more about that in the next episode, though. We're out of time. Yeah, I was actually, like, wondering in my head, I'm like, when is the festival? When is the Watanagashi? Because shit is already going down, not in a deadly sense, just in a concerning sense at this point. And that usually happens after there is a death. And that also happens after the whole Watanagashi deal. I guess there technically has been a death, that woman that Sadako's uncle was seeing. If that is the same woman. No, different woman. The woman that ended up in the like the sewer or some shit. And then the uncle's mistress or whatever. And she just ran away, I guess. That's the story, right? That's what's going on. Right? They're not the same person. Right? Well, anyways, thank you all for watching this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz. Next episode, I guess we'll see if Keiji goes to school, because that is something that may have some importance. Maybe. I don't know. See you guys then. Take it easy.